So, but this is an important one. So understanding how the winds and thermals work will really give you more of an advantage than anything you can buy off the shelf as far as scent control goes. From just a definition of wind is just defined as the natural movement of air that is coming from a particular direction. So that's what you'll typically see on your favorite weather app, like so whether within Spartan Forge or you're looking at the weatherchannel.com, all those things, that's just what you're showing your wind. That has nothing to do with thermals. That is manipulated by the terrain, that's manipulated by objects, it's manipulated by the speed, temperature, pressure, weather shifts, all of those different factors. So really it just means that by looking at what that's saying doesn't necessarily mean that's what the wind's gonna be at the area that you wanna hunt. Wind and thermals play a role in all types of hunting, and it doesn't even mean Western hunting. It can be in flat ag ground, all that stuff. But areas with topography typically you can see those thermals work a little bit more exaggerated, I guess. So with those areas, warmer air is less dense than cool air, so it's going to rise. And when same thing with cool air coming down, and the reason for that is, so thermals will typically rise in the mornings as the sun's heating up the mountains, and then it'll cool in the evenings as the sun goes down. But that's literally just a rule of thumb. Depending on what side of the mountain you're on, like right now you see like over there on that hill where that's still kind of in the shade there from cloud cover. You can probably bet that some of those thermals are going to be coming down at that time. But as soon as that sun comes out, heats that up, it could switch in like that to be able to move. Think about it, wind flows kind of like a river, and as it bumps up against trees and it bumps up against rocks, it's doing different things as it's flowing through. So if you're coming across and you have a hill here that's there and you have one over here, it's a little bit higher, as it's coming across, it might be good coming across here, but it hits that other one, it can cause a little bit, and this is very generic the way I'm saying it, doesn't just come flying across and hit it, but essentially what I'm saying is higher ground and lower ground can be able to influence how that air current is flowing through those different areas. I think we kind of already hit that a little bit, but just to drive that home, depending on what the thermals are doing there, what the wind is doing, and how that's going to react is dependent on. A lot of places I find myself hunting down below the trail. If I'm on a hemlock covered side hill and I have a bench that's going through there, I'm usually going to be almost eye level with the deer. Being in the saddle, I can stay behind it, so I'm staying hidden, but I'm below that trail because of that. Those thermals are pulling down, and it really don't matter what the wind direction is. So I'll stay down below the trail in those situations. Just found it's a pretty good sized bed right there. That's leading out. We had that faint trail that was coming off some of the bigger ridge system there and going out towards the edge of Laurel. I mean, this is in the kind of the thick of it there, but he's got a little bit of a visual down below, but real nice bed, and got some white hairs down inside it, just sitting there inside the bed. I think you'd be bedding here more so from the cover more than the wind from that standpoint. It's just a thick area. He's got the security cover. If you're getting hunting pressure coming from the top, or really any sort of predator, he can jump right down below and be able to escape out. But I think this is more of a cover thing than it is a wind-based bedding location.
So the difference between wind and thermals is, wind is what you look at when you look at the Weather Channel, or you're looking at the weather in the Spartan Forge app. You're looking at those things, and that's what the dominant wind is doing. Well, what thermals are doing is as the air rises, so as you start getting, it starts warming up the ground, you start getting upward draft that's coming through. So as the sun comes out, you start getting uphill thermals. And as the sun goes down, or somewhere's in the shade, or there's cloud cover, cooler places are gonna cause a downward thermal. There's a bunch of different things that can affect thermals and winds with different vegetation types, with different objects that are in the way. And you can almost think of like how wind flows is like a river. And as it's going, it can hit things and swirl and have undertows and all of these things. So it's a complex thing to be able to understand and to be able to learn. But if you really pay attention to it and always carry around milkweed, log those notes in your journal feature within the Spartan Forge app to be able to remember what that spot looks like. all you're doing is helping yourself when you're learning for the future. You're continually adding these things and adding these knowledge base into your arsenal of tools to be able to understand, okay, is this a place that I can actually hunt, or am I going to be end up spooking the deer? Because once the thermals take over or the thermals switch, there's just something that you really need to consider in the mountains. When you're hunting anywhere else, you're going to have thermals. Even in farm country, flat country, swamps, you're going to have some thermals. But in the mountains, it's very exaggerated, and you're going to have those thermals being a huge impact on actually how you're setting up and hunting. Even though the sun is out on this hill at this point, it's still relatively early in the morning, and with the slope that we're on, it's probably gonna take a little bit to get that full uphill draw. So probably get a little bit of swirling at the first half hour, 45 minutes as I set up, or maybe even a little bit of downhill yet. As you see, that milkweed started going down and then started to come like it was coming back up. And that's because it's kind of in that transition mode. We still have a lot of these shadows and things that are a little bit cooler on this slope, but it's starting to heat up and it's starting to do that. And that's where you get some of those swirling conditions in the mountains. This is an ideal setup for during the rut. And we have a steep draw that's coming up here below me over here to my right. And then behind me, we have a hard edge in vegetation. We have some hemlocks, and then we have some thick beech brush. And then directly below where I'm standing is an old logging road that goes around that deep cut, comes through with some big scrapes down below, right on the edge of those hemlocks. And when I was doing some scouting, found some doe bedding down around that point, and then out around this point, just down below this level. And the reason for being above the trail in this situation, and even coming in this late in the day, is because I want to take advantage of those uphill thermals. So I'm waiting for that sun to heat up the mountain, which is just starting to do now. And so I can sit above it, and I should be good while those bucks are checking those does in the bedding areas. This isn't a spot that I traditionally would think to see a deer in the first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening. So I'm not worried about when those thermals switch and pull down. I want to take advantage of that mid-morning to midday movement as they're cruising from bedding area to bedding area. So I'll generally check the wind with milkweed relatively often while I'm in the stand, maybe every hour or so while I'm sitting there checking it. And I checked this spot ahead of time in the spring while I was scouting, and that's how I knew how the thermal pull was working in these different areas, and why that I don't need to come into this place at first light to be able to do it. But what's important in these types of locations, because I still had a downward thermal when I came in from the bottom and worked my way up the ditch and then came up and across. So I didn't want to go directly, I didn't want to go from above and just have my thermals just scent coning all the deer that are on that side hill already. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to wait and sneak my way up the ditch to be able to keep concealed.